Welcome to yet another segment of Ramadan Conversations from the 973 show. And in this segment, we are going to talk about mindful Ramadan. Yes, you guessed it right. It's all about emotions, mental well-being. And with us is Dr. Anisha Abraham, a clinical psychologist and also a board member of Middle East Psychological Association Bahrain chapter. Dr. Anisha, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
It's always a pleasure, Raji.
So, Doctor, as I said, mindful Ramadan, I mentioned emotions, even otherwise, all these are there. But then the holy month brings in a lot of other things because routine changes, lifestyle changes, a lot of timetables changes for every member of the family, the society, isn't it? And this brings its own chunk of emotional challenges. How do we address this? Simple, straight.
So some of the challenges, you're right, because this is the holy month that people look forward to, and it's a month of manifold blessings. But it's also a month where some psychological symptoms can come up for people, whether or not they've had issues before. Sometimes just the process of fasting can lead to some changes in blood sugar levels and dehydration, because of which people can experience things like brain fog, a little bit of irritability, some mood changes, and feelings of fatigue, particularly in the first couple of days of fasting, because your body is just getting adjusted to it. So there can be these symptoms that are there. There's also this altered sleep pattern that's happening, and you see that, especially around here, you see that people are awake for most of the night, and in the mornings they're still expected to go ahead and go to work and still have like a normal routine and be functional. And they're bound to have some feelings of stress that comes as a result of that, particularly with prolonged periods of having disturbed sleep. I think there's also like a social pressure. This is something that comes up quite often in therapy rooms, because people can sometimes, there can be this tendency to compare oneself with others and feel a sense of pressure to match up, and then feel an extreme sense of shame if they've not been able to do everything that they've wanted to. It stems from good intent, but sometimes it can cause quite a bit of stress for people.
Yeah, rightly said, Doctor. So, summing up all these challenges, how can we address these challenges effectively?
Yeah. So, I think there are a couple of things that we can do. Number one, I think it starts with taking care of ourselves and taking care of our, physical health. So making sure that even while because after a whole day of fasting, it's quite tempting to then completely indulge in the evenings and, during the other meals where one is able to eat. But I think that it's important to try and see that, these meals are well balanced, that, that you're hydrated, that there's movement. And so that's very important, because that can keep, again, blood sugars a little bit more stable during the day, during the time of fasting, as opposed to having like a lot of caffeine and a lot of sugar, for instance. The second thing that's key is time management. I think that this is a time where it's quite normal for people to be extremely busy, because they're fasting, and then families get together for iftar, and there are a lot of social events that happen, and so at these times it's important to kind of be able to prioritize, try and have as normal a routine as possible. Of course, there are some modifications that come with the month, but to have a fairly predictable routine, to try and see as much as possible if you can try to go to bed at the same time, and to also prioritize and learn to also say no in some places, because sometimes how it is, we can be people pleasers.
Yes.
And we want to say yes to everything. But there are some places where in the larger interest of wellness, I think that's important. Also, if there are any medical issues, mental health issues, to always consult with one's doctor, because you need to first make sure that you're able to do this. And if there are any other, especially emotional challenges, to reach out to one's loved ones and talk about it, because we often choose to suffer in silence and keep it within us, and it always helps when we're able to talk to people. I think it's equally important that we offer safe spaces to those who want to speak to us.
Very true, doctor. And now coming to, again, people who carry these heavy burdens, my thought goes out to people who cannot fast due to medical reasons. There's either people with chronic diseases we often see, or people suddenly develop a medical condition and then they're unable to fast. So this would definitely put a lot of burden in them, because especially looking at it from the religious and the spiritual aspect of it. So I think this is time then we should have some self-compassion too, isn't it?
Absolutely.
As an expert.
Absolutely.
We would love to hear from you on that.
I think that we must look at Ramadan as a whole and not just look at it as, a month of fasting, because Ramadan is so much more than that. It's a time of introspection. It's a time of, reading the Quran, memorizing it. It's a time of, learning, and it's about giving, charity. It's about having, meaningful social, connections with people and things like this. So it's important to look at it as a whole. And there are many times when, for medical reasons or for mental health reasons, people are not able to fast. And in certain conditions, it's not just about, like fasting or sometimes not taking medications at the prescribed time can even lead to things like a relapse of an episode. They're more important and critical in certain conditions. And so it becomes very important that, you do what's right for one's health, because that's also a responsibility that we have. I often tell people that God is merciful and God is fully aware of everything that one is going through.
Yes.
And I think one of the foundations of Islam is also about intent. And
why are we doing this?
Yes, the why of it and the intention behind it, as opposed to doing things perfectly. And so I think that people must then reach out perhaps to religious leaders, imams, and look at what are other things that they can do. Can they, can they offer charity?
Balance it with something else?
Balance it with something else, or can they participate in? They have evening prayers, the additional prayers, the Taraweeh prayers. Whether they can be part of, they can participate in those prayers, and whether they can do other things that will be meaningful. And it shouldn't be like, sometimes traditional practices, traditional teaching can be based on fear. That if you don't do certain thing, then God will punish you. But actually, I think that focus needs to shift a bit to be able to look at a more authentic relationship with God. And I think that is something that can help us immensely to deal with the guilt. That God is merciful, that God is kind and compassionate. And of course, when you really want to, but for a medical reason, you're not able to, God sees that.
Yes.
And
that's what makes the whole month a beautiful experience, isn't it? Than going through the stress.
Yes, and one should not be beating themselves up.
Right. And I'm so happy that this month also comes alongside another beautiful day, which is just on the corner, or, it's Women's Day. Happy Women's Day. Yeah. So to all the lovely women out there, I pose this question to Dr. Anisha, because mothers and wives and, the women at home, it's also a trying time for them, the holy month, balancing the act. We have working women, we have homemakers, we have young mothers, old mothers, grandmothers, isn't it? So a salute to all these women folk out there.
Absolutely.
Bless. Yeah. What is your...
So you are so right, because in addition to all of these things that we were talking about with regard to the general population, when it comes to women and mums and all of that, they're also doing this additional thing of taking care of everybody. So even through their own spiritual practices or the fatigue that they are experiencing, they need to then be there making sure that meals are prepped very early in the morning, making sure that,
everything is on time and life is,
and so it can be quite a lot. It can, very often people talk about these things, and safe spaces. Sometimes there's also a tinge of guilt but the truth is that a lot of women are very overwhelmed. And I think that for sure families must come and take charge and do a lot of things. Now, for instance, to chip in, to come help out, to be part of it, to not just stand on the side, but actually get involved. Sometimes also to reduce the demands that are placed on women, to acknowledge the efforts that they're putting in, because I think that is huge, to be seen and to be acknowledged for all the work that you're doing, for all the sleep that you're losing, and for all your efforts. I think that it's true that women are doing all of these things that we're talking about, and taking care of the family, making sure that meals are prepared very early in the morning, and even when they're kind of tired after a day full of fasting, again for the iftar, and making sure that things are still going on well at home, while still having a career of their own, or even if they're home. I think these tasks, far outweigh, any other, thing that someone else is handling. So I think it's very important that we acknowledge the efforts that are being put in, so that women feel seen for everything that they're doing during Ramadan, and even at times outside of Ramadan.
Yes.
And people in the family, whether they're spouses, whether they're children, very early must start taking on responsibilities and chores, so that it's not just mom's job. And I think that's more important, even as we talk about Women's Day, I think that's more important than, pink roses or pink cupcakes and all of these other tokens that, come up during a Women's Day. I think that we need to acknowledge, respect, and definitely share the load.
Yes, that's true. Doctor, thank you very much for this lovely little conversation where we touched upon some important aspects. But then, on a closing note, what is it that you have to tell our viewers on this Ramadan, this holy month, where we are talking of being mindful, being self-compassionate, and being supportive to fellow human beings, especially women?
So I have a couple of take-home messages. So one is the importance of balance, the importance of small, consistent efforts, and being kind to oneself. You may not be able to do it all, but we can do what we can do in a consistent manner. Number two, about I think that the structure and the managing one's time, that's very important. And the third thing is for us to be able to practice active gratitude and really count our blessings, especially during this time of Ramadan. And also, spread that joy to those around us.
Great. Thank you very much, and Ramadan Kareem.
Ramadan Kareem to you too.
So that was Dr. Anisha Abraham talking to us on how to be self-compassionate. Yes, mindful Ramadan on the 973 show, Ramadan Conversations. Ramadan Kareem.